Oh, hi, Shahina. How are you today?
Hey Natalia, I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm so excited to talk to you today. Shahina and I are longtime friends and colleagues. We met working at eBay way back, well over a decade ago. Um,
I know time flies. Crazy.
time flies, and Shahina has a wealth of experience building AI products at scale at some of the most iconic companies in Silicon Valley. So, to kick it off, Shahina, tell us about your journey. How did you get to where you are now? Where did you start? What did you study?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to share. So I was born and raised in Tashkent, which is the capital city of Uzbekistan, back when it was a part of Soviet Union. Born into an academic family. So my dad was a mathematics professor. My mom was a professor of language and literature. So it's very kind of a family that valued education. So grew up studying math and all enjoyed every subject basically I studied, but also at an early age started to learn how to code in BASIC and Pascal, and that was just super fun. It wasn't common to have access to the computers, when you were young back then, but thanks to my dad's work, I had that, so I was very fortunate. And I think I'd like to think my first job was actually when I was like maybe third grade, 9 years old. I started tutoring kids in my school, teaching them English because they found out that I was learning English with my dad and also math because they needed help. And just like gradually moved that over, to a full blown kind of a tutoring business. Started with kids, but then gradually moved on to tutoring adults, like, students and professionals who wanted to study English. And by the time I was in high school, I was actually making, kind of a full-on adult salary that adults were like very envious of. So I'd like to think that I was like a solopreneur back then. So growing up, I just came to this realization, maybe when I was like 13, 14, 15, that I really needed to get out of the country. I was thinking that there was like overall, it was like a conservative setting. I wasn't expected to like it wasn't women weren't really expected much outside of bearing children, raising a family, right, taking care of your family. And I just had high expectations for myself. I was growing up in this kind of progressive family who you know taught me to dream big and so on. So I wanted to just get out of there, move to the US, study there. So I started like learning English very seriously, studying for like tests and exams and TOEFL tests and all that kind of stuff. And when I was 17, so after high school, moved to the US to study computer science. Ended up at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. So I studied my both undergrad in computer science and master's grad school in computer science there as well. I was fortunate enough in during my master's, kind of program to be exposed to Professor Barry, who was focusing on machine learning, data mining, information retrieval, and that whole field was fascinating for me. So he was my mentor and thesis advisor. I ended up working with him on kind of reduced rank approximation, matrix factorization, those kinds of problems, and kind of latent semantics indexing and so on. So that was a whole lot of fun. After graduating, a natural progression, of course, was to become an engineer. So I moved to Austin. I worked for a company called National Instruments as an applications engineer. Did that for a couple of years. And I was fortunate enough there to be a part of their what they were calling engineering leadership program, where they would expose you to different fields, like in leadership roles. One of them was product management. Decided to try that out because as an engineer, I always found myself asking questions of like, why, right? Like the overall, what is the big picture? What problem are we solving? Why are we solving it? For whom? Do they actually need it? Like all this stuff and like actually building products, with teams of the interdisciplinary people. So tried on product management absolutely loved it and never looked back since. So from then on, just overall kind of have been in product roles.
I find it surprising that you didn't do a PhD.
I think actually being in grad school and seeing how professors operate and just overall kind of how academia operates, I wasn't really a fan of just overall kind of grant like writing, grant proposals and then like, just like the whole thing is about like writing research papers and publishing, right? It's just like such a, kind of huge aspect to it. It's just more theoretical instead of actually kind of work, like thinking about the applications in the industry. So I was eager to actually just try, to apply my knowledge in the industry. And it was like, just get me a job. I will, try, I'll figure it out. I just want to I just want to work. Right. So I was just always eager at school just to kind of skip steps, skip class, just like kind of skip prerequisites. And, my goal was to graduate as fast as I can. So I got my master's when I was 22, and my thesis advisor, Dr. Berry, was like, Shakhina, you can stay for another year or so and you'll get your PhD, right? Are you sure you want to quit now? I was like, yeah, I want real world experience.
I recently read an essay that you wrote about your career experience and stepping into the industry and finding that people didn't have high expectations for women and weren't sure quite what to make of you. Um, Tell us a little bit more about that transition from academia to industry, and then how you made your way in the industry over the years.
Yeah, I found the industry, especially tech world to be very like very conservative, right? Like you can't just raise your hand and say like, oh, I'm going to work on this problem, right? Like I'm going to challenge myself and I'm just going to do this role. You can't just do that. There's like all these, basically like ladders, right? Like your roles and expectations and like what you need to do. And it's just like, you need to be very patient. A lot of it really is about the opportunity, like whether there's an opportunity, whether you'll get considered for it, whether you have the right network within the company and within the industry in general to who would actually sponsor you and pull you up to the right opportunities and who would really take chances on you. And that's unfortunately very rare, especially I found that for women, that's very rare, right? Like entire industry is dominated by men. And people who are like themselves. That's the truth, right? So they tend to groom and mentor people who are similar to themselves. And most of the leadership roles being filled with men, they tend to find other mentees, unfortunately. So I found that to be frustrating. I always wanted, like, I was always competing against myself, right? So how can I challenge myself? How can I do better, grow faster, that sort of thing. So I started my career at National Instruments. It was a great setting for me. So like I said, from engineering, moved on to product management. I was working on in the e-commerce side, building systems advisors, like decision engines, and using rules-based engines and so on. So that was fascinating at first, but I got bored out of it, right? So I wanted to grow, I wanted to challenge myself outside of it, and then wanted to, and I knew, of course, Silicon Valley is where it's at. I wanted to, there's so much opportunity there, so many amazing big tech companies like working on cutting edge problems, especially in machine learning and AI field. So I wanted to get exposed to that. But that leap was actually the hardest, probably, leap in my professional experience. So like just overall kind of going through hundreds and hundreds of, interview processes and rejection after rejection, right? Because I didn't have any network. I didn't know anyone in the Bay Area who would pull me up. So it's just been, but then eBay did take a chance on me. That's where we met, right? So we were on the same team. So I was very thankful for that from there on. It's actually been then kind of the power of LinkedIn, power of network, all of that. So that really helped me. But just overall, I would say a lot of it is luck. A lot of it is the network. A lot of it, of course, is hard work, talent, intelligence, and so on. You need to put in the work, but it's not just that. And that was what was a bit kind of the difference between academia at the industry.
Yeah, as you talk, it mirrors a lot of my experience in the industry as well. And my parents always stress the importance of hard skills and never put any importance on soft skills or developing relationships. So when I think back, it was just a weakness and something that I was unaware of in my early days. When you think back throughout your career, what would you tell your 20-year-old self career wise? If you could go back, what are the few things you would tell Shahina, who is just starting out?
I'd say just figure out what your calling is and just create your own path, right? Just feel free to explore, figure out what you want, figure out, what excites you, what gives you energy, what mission you want to contribute to, and really kind of craft your own path, and just like keep remembering that you are on your own path instead of just comparing yourself to others who are on the same journey. Don't follow others, just, you know, do what's right for you. I ran LinkedIn profile for a couple of years back at LinkedIn, and Ryan Roslansky was our head of product back then, currently as the CEO. And I would pitch to him like, we need to, create this career path feature within LinkedIn where we would show using LinkedIn data. Right, LinkedIn has so much data about professionals' journeys, their career progression. So we would actually show like common kind of paths to help young professionals with crafting their own paths. And he would just stubbornly say, "No, Shahina, I've heard this from so many product managers before, and we are not building that product because the minute we're going to build that product and get that data out there and show conventional kind of traditional paths and so on, everyone is going to try to follow it. Instead, they need to create their own path." So fast forward to now, currently he has his show. I don't know if you've seen, I think it's called The Path, and he interviews remarkable people in the industry with their kind of crazy paths, right? Like journeys, professional journeys that are nothing but linear, nothing but just kind of conventional. They're all unique and different, and he highlights those in the video series. And I think he has a podcast there as well. So I think I would just say, yeah, lesson, just overall kind of, number one, don't worry about career and paths and ladders and so on. The other thing I would tell myself is actually write things down as you're experiencing them, as you're learning, getting insights from different kind of roles you have through your journey. You learn things and write them down, and I would say ideally actually share them as well. Doesn't have You don't have to have a huge audience. Could be just for the audience of one, which is the future you. But writing things are so important because I think we are a collection of all the people we've ever been and we will ever be, right? So we're just like, not there's not just one instance of me, and there's just whole kind of collection of all different instances of Shahina. I surprise myself sometimes that the younger self, my younger self, has been actually smarter and wiser in so many respects. So just writing things down is very important. Also, I would say periodically zoom in and out. In tech world, we always talk about explore and exploit, right? Or just zoom in and out. Overall, kind of in math, in calculus, for instance, there's the whole kind of that same concept of differentiation and integration. Just like dig deep into the kind of the really zoom in to the moments, and zoom out all the way out. That's the integration part, and see the big picture. And by that, what I mean is actually take breaks. Especially in the US, the work culture is just work hard, just like to the point of burnout. And I think we've been overall kind of as an industry, as a community, getting better lately, but that was not something that I saw in others, in my role models, that like they weren't taking breaks. So I would say just take a break, reflect on your life. Travel for me, I've taken 2 years off at the end of in 2019, 2020, right before the pandemic, and explored and wandered around the world. All right, like I lived in 16 different countries in 16 months, and just I felt like I lived a million different lives then over that span of, kind of 2 years. And I was writing a math book, as you know, in collaboration with my dad, and also was just kind of really learning about the, problems of, local communities and, everywhere, like in so many places in the world, and just listening to them and learning about their culture, exploring the nature and so on. So that's been really transformational. And I try to do that now, I think, every few years. Some people call it a sabbatical, some people call it mini retirement or breaks or whatever it is, right? Just keep doing that, I would say. And kind of connected to that is actually you need to put yourself into a situation where you can afford to do that, right? So I do understand that it's a privilege to be able to do that. Most of the population, they're not in the financial situation to be able to take breaks. So that brings me to my next point of set yourself up financially to do that. And for me, back when I was in my 20s, I was so financially illiterate, right? I was earning good amount of money. I was working in Silicon Valley, but I was just not investing it, right? Like I wasn't even contributing to my 401k. Actually, John Conrad, our manager, back in the traffic team, one day was like, "You're contributing to your 401k, right? Like you have everything in order." I'm like, "No, I don't do that. Like what if I need my money? Why would I do that?" And it was like, just let's sit down. I'm gonna like walk you through. It's really easy. You have to do it. So I'm like thankful, to him for that. But investing early is just so, so important. Um, Nurturing your network, like creating your network, nurturing your network. We talked about that from my LinkedIn days. It's just, and also kind of that like breakthrough point for me, right? Moving from Austin to Silicon Valley, and then just ever since then, in my professional journey, just network has been so important. I think LinkedIn has published some data. Maybe it was Jeff Wehner's post that they found that your network, which is where you were born, the community you were born into, your where you went to school, and where you work, actually puts you into huge advantage career-wise. And it actually you're like 12 times more likely to land an opportunity, if you have a healthy network, and especially if you have referrals. Like I think like more than 70 people who land, jobs are more than 70% of them have a connection in that company already. People who are referred to roles are 9 times more likely to land jobs and things like that. So network, not just building the network, but actually nurturing your network, keeping in touch with them. Like you said, creating relationships and keeping relationships, nurturing them is such an important skill set. I don't think we teach young professionals enough of that. And I know it's long, but last but not least, I would say, how they say, do what you love. But my dad used to always say, love what you do, right? So it's the other part of it is just so important as well. So because, if you love what you do, that gives you energy, like you find joy in it, you find, kind of beauty in it. My dad used to always quote like Dostoevsky's quote, just beauty will save the world. And he modified it and said, beauty and humor saves the world. So I've actually always been kind of fascinated with nature, arts, and so on. So like finding beauty in things, even in mundane things, have always been easy for me. But what I keep forgetting is the humor part. So I would say approach life with humor, because a lot of things are actually kind of funny. So even like during that time, it may not feel like that, especially all the kind of, things happening in the world and like in the workforce and so on. So just, I would say approach life with humor as well.
Are there any career related books that you'd recommend to people?
Susan Cain's Quiet has had such profound effect on me. So it's just like the world of introverts, right? Like you have superpower as an introvert because like, being in the workforce, every one of my managers, especially when I was younger, have been like, Shakhina, you need to speak up. You need to be louder, right? You need to just like stand up and like command the room, like command the meetings and things like that. And they were well intentioned, but these were most of them, if not all, tall white males, right? Like managers who had deep voices, and all they would have to do is just stand up and speak, and just like they would command the room and so on. I had to find my own way, and I would always think that introversion and being quiet is actually my weakness. And at some, like, earlier on in my career, I would try to fix that. And then I learned through the book Quiet, the power of introverts in a world that can't stop talking. Right, that's the subtitle of the book. Learned that it's actually my superpower, and I need to really kind of leverage that, and just like thinking about things, like listening to people, is actually a skill a lot of people can't master. So that book has been kind of life changing for me. From kind of more from an industry perspective, Crossing the Chasm, the classic. Right, so that's been great to read by Jeffrey Moore. A Year Without Pants. Do you know that book?
I do not
So
know
this
this.
is it's a project manager, program manager, I think from Microsoft, a very established program manager's network. And he wrote about he had an opportunity to work at Automatic, who build WordPress. And if you know, they're a completely remote company. They've always been like that. Very small, like it's a very small company in terms of number of employees who work there, but they power like crazy number of internet traffic, right? So all the the blog posts and things like that, maybe 30-40% of pages on the internet are powered by WordPress, and they're fully remote. So this author went and worked there for a whole year, and he writes about his learnings about the company culture, how they communicate, how they collaborate, and it's such a completely flat organization. Everyone remote. They just meet up, once or twice a year to do hackathons and things like that, but that's about it. So, like, especially reading that, even before the pandemic, when we were forced into the remote work, was very eye-opening. It was just very kind of liberating for me. And I'm a huge fan of remote work, but of course, like really, the culture needs to be right for it. So there are a lot of learnings there from that book.
Yeah, there's a hot debate going on in the tech world around remote work, or the fact that so many of the big companies are now asking their employees to go back to the office. A lot of what you said, I mean, around introversion really resonates with me, because I also am very introverted and have struggled with that, but have come to be at peace with it and consider it a strength, and just not something that I care to change anymore at this
Yeah,
point.
100% for sure. It's the power. Yeah.
Yeah. You've worked on so many iconic products: search and discovery, recommendations, so much more at Snowflake, LinkedIn, Eventbrite, eBay. What is the one thing you would take away from all of these companies? What stuck with you?
At Uber scale, I would say that the algorithms and AI, products in general are really increasingly ruling the world, right? That's no secret. Working on all of these, algorithmic and data products across different industries and different types of product lines, like businesses and so on. It's just I've come to the realization that we need to take responsibility. We need to be more responsible. We need to be more thoughtful and intentional when we're building these products, and we need to think more deeply. We need more of system level thinkers, right? Like you need to understand what's the impact of the decisions that you're making, the way you're kind of coding your algorithm. What's the impact on the society? What's the kind of unexpected impacts, right? Like, so I don't know why product managers don't work more closely with sociologists, psychologists, like people more in the humanities. Tech has like this more of an arrogance problem. We think we know it all, or we think we can figure things out on our own.
You've struck on something that is so important: the fact that the tech world is so mired in solutionism. It's all about finding the right solution. Everything should have a solution, as opposed to thinking about things more holistically and really questioning whether what we're doing and building is actual progress. Um, and what are the unintended consequences of everything that we build? Working with data is one of the crucial parts of making AI products work. What are the best practices for working with data when you're building AI products?
I completely agree. Data is what makes it, because if you have junk in, it's junk out, right? So if you don't have the right data, if it's not accurate, if it's not representative, if it's biased, all of these things, if it's not actually ethical, you're gonna run into problems. So I would say be very thoughtful about your data collection. You need to have a diverse and representative data that's representative of your users. And you can augment with synthetic data if you don't have the representation for certain audience segments and things like that, or certain use cases. But also make sure it's legal and ethical. So it's always important to have your legal counsel in the room when you're involve your legal counsel, I would say, when you're even like very early thinking about data collection. From there, data quality is an ongoing effort. It's not just in the very beginning when we are building your AI models, actually, throughout. You need to make sure you're cleaning your data and stripping out incorrect or harmful data, remove the outliers, make sure the data is consistent. It's not going to, it's not telling the algo like multiple different things all at once. So periodically, I would say reviewing the quality needs to be a consistent effort by AI teams. Privacy is super important, right? So I worked at Snowflake, where in the data sharing org, where we were working on the collaboration workflow. How can we help companies share data amongst each other to solve important problems, right? But they need to be able to do that in privacy preserving way, because, just for a variety of reasons, but there's so many different solutions out there. So like data clean rooms was what Snowflake has been really focusing on, but a bunch of different techniques, anonymization, differential privacy, so on and so forth. So definitely take privacy to heart. Governance privacy should not be a second-class citizen or afterthought. It should be a first-class citizen. You need to actually, you really need to pay attention to that. For some applications, data freshness is especially important. So maybe you're operating with stale data, or times are changing, where like everything feels like it's changing so fast now. So making sure the data you have is fresh and accurate and up to date. And overall, I'm hearing more and more about, especially in the context of generative AI, the accuracy is a problem, right? So it's so fluent that it fools us, but accuracy is a problem. So invest in knowledge graphs. So just you need to have like really accurate data, and kind of in the form of a knowledge graph is usually a great best practice, I would say.
What is that secret behind building successful AI products?
But not so secret is that like really it's humans, right? We tend to forget, I feel like, about humans when we're thinking about machines, and we forget that machines are actually being built by humans. Everything about it, the whole journey and the whole process of building AI products, humans are very much involved there. So starting with um, human judgment, right? So for instance, like when you're collecting your training data and labeling it, so that essentially the data that you're trying to learn from involves a lot of the companies employ human judgment, so crowdsource human judgment for that. They also use crowdsource human judgment for figuring out what's good for evaluation, right? So whether like when you have especially early versions of your algorithm, or early versions of your model, is it providing accurate results? Is it good or not? User feedback throughout the process, of product development cycle. From the very early on, using human judgment, you can do dog fooding. If you're a big company, actually LinkedIn did that really well. We would have very early version, like a kind of a pilot product. We would open it up internally, and especially essentially alpha testers, right? Like who are employees of the company. And when you're working at when you have 10,000, I think at the time, employees who are using LinkedIn on a daily basis, then they can help you identify issues, whether it's bias, whether it's just inaccuracies, and so on. That aspect. So just overall, I would say humans are the ones who are teaching the machines, the models, how how to make decisions. Humans are the ones who are guiding these models and cleaning the data, babysitting, whatever you want to call it, right? Like we're essentially, I'd like to think of it as a kind of, we're in a garden. We are, creating life. We're growing things in the garden, and we need to really guide the life that we're helping create, instead of just like letting it out in the wild if it performs, if it's promising in the very early kind of stages. So humans really, really need to be involved, and I think that's something I don't think a lot of people, professionals, realize. And then on the other spectrum, on the human front, what I talked about, kind of multidisciplinary effort, right? So it's not just you, your core team. It's not just the product manager, engineer, data scientists, AI researchers, designers, and so on. But it's just like outside of that, involved domain experts. So for instance, when we're doing at LinkedIn, we're building LinkedIn news that you see on the product today, and that was a collaboration with LinkedIn editors. So editors who are actually, they have control. Yes, we built an algorithmic solution for them to find interesting content to feature, but really they seed that the algorithms with their own curation, and then they're just in general they're in control. So and really understanding the process of news creation with editors has been really eye-opening for me. The whole like journalism, right? That it's not something you can take lightly. When we were doing machine translation, we were working with linguists and actual translators on a daily basis. We employed them, and there were a bunch of contractors as well. It's really important to partner with domain experts. At eBay, I had the privilege of working with distinguished economists, professors from UC Berkeley, when we were like creating models for paid search. And just really getting their perspective of like economic system and things like that. So I would say just really involve experts. It should be in a multidisciplinary effort.
AI is so probabilistic, and it's very hard for people to know what to expect when working with it. What are some tips you might have for handling issues and communicating with stakeholders? Because you have people who have so many different levels of expertise around AI.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, transparency really helps, both communicating internally, whether it's with your peers, with your team, or with leadership and stakeholders. Being transparent about at what stage you are with your AI product. A lot of the times I've learned like the beta sticker helps, right? We're in beta. This is very early. We're collecting feedback right now. So don't get upset when you don't see, the right result, all the time, or when you're getting funny results or, incorrect results and things like that. So being transparent about like the in progress state of the product, of the model, is very important. Externally, I think just overall clear feedback mechanisms. First of all, of course, involve all your customers when you're in the ideation state of building the models. Get their expertise and so on, especially with Snowflake, for instance. Enterprise usually does this well because they have customers, right, to ask. So like really learning about their care abouts, what they're trying to cater to their customers, how we can help, and things like that. And establishing clear feedback mechanisms is really important. So both internally and externally, being able to making it super easy to report issues or when things don't look right. Right. So all of that is very important. So like I talked about human judgment as well during the development of the model. Could be rating system, thumbs up, thumbs down, reporting issues and things like that. I forgot about user research. That's key, right? Like like really partnering with user research folks there, getting feedback from them is important. And then like overall kind of watching the metrics that like metrics can tell you a lot, right? So just watching the metrics, how they're shifting the human behavior, how a new product, how um, just it will tell you about like the reception of the product, whether it's going right or wrong.
The current education system is outdated and was not designed for the world that we live in today. You're writing a book and working on reimagining how math is taught. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, like I mentioned, my dad was a math professor, and over the years, he got fed up with how education system is broken, especially when it comes to teaching math. And especially in the age of AI now, I think it's extremely important to really learn math the proper way because actually math has historically had a huge marketing problem. We all like most of the people think math is for calculation, right? You were a math major, so you probably have your own frustrations about how people think about math, but most people think it's about calculation. Or there's another school of thought of saying, oh, I'm in the arts or creative fields or in humanities and so on. Why do I need math? Right? So like people who are working on AI problems and so on, they can learn math, but it's not for me. So there's just overall kind of a marketing problem, I would say, throughout. But what they don't realize is that math helps you learn, like really learn how to think, right? So it helps with logical thinking, learning how to think creatively, how to think critically, problem solving, all of those things. Even if math is not giving you tangible skills that you need, like when am I going to use integrals, for instance, right? Like on my day-to-day life, that throughout the process of learning math, you actually learn how to think better. And that's increasingly important in the current world. We need to be able to think critically in the age of misinformation, right? In the age of AI, who has lying problems and hallucination problems and so on. And I would actually say, like, go as far as saying that math helps with compassion as well, because you learn how to solve problems from different perspectives, putting yourself in different shoes, like being able to think differently from different perspectives, right? Like visually, like geometrically, for instance, like from the perspective of probabilistic kind of ways, like more kind of logic is a big component of math and so on. So actually, my hope is that it can help you. With this book, we can help people become more compassionate as well. So the approach we're taking is to really reform the content. So reform the content that's traditionally taught in schools, high schools, college, and so on. Really focusing on providing the right context for people. So like giving historical context, philosophical context, really talking about the shortcomings of math as well, because there like a lot of people think math is done. Like all of this stuff, like all these smart people have figured this out, right? It's great. Like there's only like one or right solution. That's it. No, it's not. Math is still evolving, and we need to be able to create new maths to solve the problems, the modern problems that we're facing. And we're using a lot of the storytelling techniques. So just overall kind of the more approachable style of teaching, a lot of artistic kind of visualizations as well, and really emphasizing on providing mathematical culture as well as the mathematical technique to people. So you can't just tell people about concepts that are behind math. You need to actually people need to get their hands dirty there as well. They need to learn how to solve equations, work with symbols, and so on. So the technique part is important as well. So that's the approach we're taking, and I've been super fortunate to work on this. It's been super exciting. I've been learning so much myself. And now with ChatGPT, actually, it's been really fascinating to kind of, pose questions to ChatGPT as well. And then, just like trying to kind of uh, think of different ways of explaining the same concept. And I think just overall, generative AI, LLMs will have huge effect on education. So that aspect has been great to witness on a day-to-day basis as well as I'm writing them.
An absolute pleasure chatting with you today.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.